For over 70 years, Formula One has been this relentless quest for the absolute limit. It's a high-speed laboratory where genius engineering and just raw human drama collide. So we're going to break down how the sport evolved from a really dangerous pastime for daredevils into the technological marvel it is today. But here's the crucial thing to understand. This has always been a story about two things fighting each other. On one hand, you've got this relentless, obsessive pursuit of ultimate speed. And on the other, a desperate parallel fight for survival. And that tension, right there, that's what's shaped every single era of the sport. So our journey is going to take us through four distinct ages. We'll start with the early revolutionaries who completely turned car design on its head. Then we'll dive into the brutal, untamed power of the turbo era, move into the age of data-driven perfection, and finally, we'll take a peek into what's coming next. All right, let's start back in the 1950s. The first Formula One cars were, well, they were basically powerful engines on wheels. We're talking front-engine monsters that were brutally fast in a straight line, but good luck trying to control them. But that was all about to change, thanks to a revolutionary shift in thinking. Okay, this right here, this might be the single most important design shift in F1's entire history. Those early cars were these front-engine behemoths, dominated by Italian giants like Ferrari. But then, in the 60s, a bunch of smaller British teams had a radical idea. What if we put the engine behind the driver? By moving all that weight to the middle of the car, they just dramatically improved the balance and traction, letting drivers carry way more speed through the corners. It was an absolute game changer. And this quote, it just perfectly captures the culture clash of the time. The great Enzo Ferrari, founder of the most famous team in the world, basically dismissed these innovative British teams as garagistes, just garage mechanics. But while he was scoffing, these so-called mechanics were busy making his cars look ancient. And the leader of this pack of garagistes was the legendary Colin Chapman of Lotus, and he introduced this, the monocoque chassis. So instead of building a car on a heavy frame, the skin of the car was its skeleton. This made the car unbelievably light and stiff, giving his drivers a massive advantage in the corners. So the cars were getting faster and faster and faster. But here's the problem. Innovation was totally outpacing safety. By a huge margin. The drivers were racing these fragile rockets on tracks lined with trees and buildings with almost zero protection. And so this question became unavoidable. What was the real cost of all this speed? And the answer? It came from a champion. After seeing way too many of his friends and competitors die, Jackie Stewart used his fame to start a safety crusade. He fought for stuff we just take for granted now: mandatory seatbelts, proper helmets, and safer tracks. He faced huge resistance at the time, but he ultimately saved countless lives. Okay, let's jump forward to the next era, which was a time of absolute extremes. The 80s and 90s brought us unimaginable power. Two of the greatest drivers in history locked in this bitter rivalry, and a dark, dark weekend that would force the sport to look in the mirror and change forever. Seriously, just look at that number, 1,500 horsepower. Let that sink in for a second. That's what some of these turbo engines were pushing out for a single qualifying lap. We're talking about absolute monsters, fire-breathing beasts that were just borderline uncontrollable. It was a wild, spectacular, and incredibly dangerous time to be a Formula One driver. And right at the center of all this chaos were two titans, Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna. You literally could not invent two more different personalities. Prost was the professor, this cool, calculating, intellectual driver. And Senna was a pure force of nature, driving with this raw passion and instinct. Their rivalry, especially as teammates, was one of the most intense and captivating stories in the history of any sport. But this incredible rivalry, this whole wild era, it all came to a tragic, heartbreaking end in 1994. At the San Marino Grand Prix in Imola, the sport lost Ayrton Senna in a high-speed crash that was watched by millions around the globe. His death sent a shockwave through the world. It was the brutal, undeniable wake-up call that progress on safety had stalled, forcing a complete and permanent change in the sport's entire philosophy. So what came out of that tragedy was a totally new era, one that wasn't about brute force anymore, but about the absolute mastery of science and data. This is where Formula One becomes a technological powerhouse, perfecting safety and producing new, legendary champions who would rewrite all the record books.
The reaction after Imola 94 was immediate and massive. The sport's governing body, the FIA, launched a total system overhaul. The cars were immediately redesigned with higher cockpit sides, stronger crash structures. Circuits were reprofiled to have more runoff areas to slow cars down. Look, this wasn't just a tweak here and there. It was a fundamental shift that would turn F1 into a global benchmark for safety in motorsport.
And all this focus led to some incredible new technologies. You've got the modern survival cell. It's basically an indestructible carbon fiber tub that protects the driver. The HANS device, which has been mandatory since 2003, protects the head and neck in a crash. And of course, the Halo, that titanium shield introduced in 2018 that has already, without a doubt, saved several drivers from serious injury or even worse.
And out of this new, safer era, a new legend rose. Michael Schumacher joined a struggling Ferrari team back in 1996, and he had one mission, and one mission only, to drag the legendary Italian team back to the top of the mountain.
And what he and Ferrari pulled off, well, it was just staggering. For 5 straight years, from 2000 all the way to 2004, they were practically unbeatable. Schumacher's unique blend of supreme talent, incredible physical fitness, and a relentless work ethic, it created an era of dominance that the sport had never seen before.
Okay, fast forward to 2014, and boom, another massive technological revolution hits. This time, it's the shift to these incredibly complex hybrid power units. This change created a new opportunity, and one team, Mercedes, and one driver, Lewis Hamilton, just absolutely nailed it better than anyone else. And the result? A second wave of dominance that just shattered the record books all over again. Powered by that revolutionary Mercedes hybrid engine, Lewis Hamilton racked up 6 more championships. And in doing so, he cemented his own legacy by tying Michael Schumacher's record of 7 world titles, a number nobody thought we'd ever see again.
But after so many years of one team just running away with it, Formula One knew it had to shake things up. So, for 2022, they brought in a radical new set of rules, bringing back something called ground effect. It's a design where the car's floor is shaped like an inverted wing, and it literally creates a vacuum that sucks the car to the asphalt. This gives it immense grip without all the dirty air from complex wings, so cars can follow each other much more closely. And wouldn't you know it, one team figured this out way better than anyone else, unleashing a new dominant force, Red Bull Racing and their superstar driver Max Verstappen.
And that pretty much brings us up to today. Formula One's history is just one of constant evolution, always pushing the boundaries of what's possible. But the revolution never ever stops. So, what's next on the horizon? Well, the next massive shakeup is just around the corner, in 2026. The engines are going to run on 100% sustainable fuels. They'll have a 50-50 power split between the engine and the electric motor. The cars themselves are going to be smaller and more agile, and get this, they'll have active aerodynamics, movable wings that change shape to cut drag on the straights and then give you maximum grip in the corners. Which really leaves us with one final big question. For over 70 years, F1 has chased raw speed. Now it's chasing sustainable speed and even closer racing. So the question isn't if the sport is going to revolutionize itself again. We know it will. The real question is, what's that next giant leap going to look like?